Whitford Bird Garden is open Friday and Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m, or by arrangement. Today, Blake is hosting a group of ladies from the Howick Probus Club.
It's worth it. Name's Blake Twigden, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction to why I created the Whitford Bird Garden, so that you'll understand this rather unique situation. It is not like a normal garden, and it's probably the most unique garden of its type in the country. I'm a Remuera boy, went to Auckland Grammar and Remuera School, and I remember when I was a little boy, you might remember too, we used to break puddles of ice on the way to school. So I was sensing over the years that the country was getting warmer, long before people used to talk about it. I went to Australia in 1966, became an artist over there, and had my first exhibition in 1971 in Sydney, and it was anti-pollution and conservation. The media picked it up because it was a contentious issue, and a young New Zealander coming to town telling them that they were polluting their country and threatening their species got a lot of media attention. That allowed me to have good sales, and I went to New Guinea for my first trip to see birds of paradise, and I've been hung up on birds of paradise ever since. So my main reputation in Australia was painting birds of paradise from New Guinea and fish. I was one of the first people, or maybe the first person to do paintings of fish from under the sea in the 70s, and I had a major exhibition in London in 1977, and I'll show you a book of that exhibition when we get into the little gallery. And a lot of you will remember the wonderful One Tree Hill tree, which is now gone, and I was fortunate enough to get a branch given to me by the gentleman who cut it down, and I made 6 little pots because I had 6 little babies come up from the pine cones. And can you people see at the back, there's the mother tree and the memorial to Logan Campbell on my pot, and 4 of these have gone to charities, but I've kept 2 for posterity, and this was about 9 years old now. Now, one of the marvellous coincidences when I was building this car park 5 years ago, I found this sculpture by Terry Stringer. It's a bronze of a woman who has a bun, and my mother had a bun, and she taught me to paint and sculpt. And this sculpture has the bird's wing on the back. So mother passed away 30 years ago, and I found this lovely piece just in the right time when I was building the car park for the Whitford Bird Garden. So when we go into the garden, you are going to be walking on a boardwalk. It's almost better if I talk to you all here before we go into the gallery, because you'll just be spread out a bit more when you're in there. I want you to walk in single file, please. I do have turtles and tortoises and things that walk around, but I'm sorry, but I haven't been seeing them today, so I think they're starting to feel autumn. And I've learned I'm feeding them too well, so they go to sleep with their full tummies easily. You know, if I starved them more, they'd hang around more. They go for 4 months too, and they were out day before yesterday. That's the boy, up there. Good boy. This bird is from the Himalayas, and he's named after the Viceroy of India's wife. Lord and Lady Amherst were in the British Raj for a while, and that lucky lady's got this bird named after her.
Are there many there?
These aren't threatened. I'm going to point out the ones that are threatened. And it's a male, of course, and the cape is magnificent for a few reasons. Number one, it's a great protection against his throat from any vermin that might come and grab him. It's also a wonderful raincoat. It gets surprisingly big, and when he's sitting in these trees and it's raining, he's got his head down and the cape and then the body and the tail, and the water's just running off. And then when he's doing his dance, he rotates it so it becomes a giant, like a big Catherine wheel. On one side, he fans his wing feathers a bit up so that she sees the beautiful blue, and then he fans his tail and he curves his body and he jumps around her, and it doesn't take long before she succumbs. I'm just going to explain, some of you might Now I'm going to ask you to stay still. Reeves, a few people stay still. Reeves, come here, bud. Come here.
Oh, lovely bird.
Oh. Good boy, come here.
Look at that.
Now, you've seen, so I'm going to mainly talk to these people. This is the Reeves pheasant from central China. He has this magnificent tail, and he is on the threatened list. And he's the king, he's the alpha male of the garden.
Is he threatened because of his plumage and stuff?
He's threatened because people are living where he's...
Oh, I see.
Sweetie. Do you mind if we take
Well, you're not kept
No.
over like you're netting over there. How do you keep them in if they want to take off?
They could.
They could take
They
off.
fly up into the big trees at night, but this garden is so big and generous for their life, they don't need to leave. Pheasants and quail only fly when they have to, by being
see.
chased or to get new territory. Normally they live on the ground. And you won't believe this, but his tail hasn't fully grown yet. Isn't that fabulous? And for the first 2 years I gave the feathers to people, you know, because you'd get like a dancer, or parents would come and say, my daughter's learning dance, and could we have those for this, blah, blah, blah. So I gave them away, and ever since, after those first 2 years, they get broken and damaged in the winter. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the white heron over on the beach there. It's made from fiberglass from Dennis Connor's keel of Stars and Stripes, which is a pretty elite sort of material to use, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I designed a painting with the keel coming towards you a bit, with the 2 New Zealand dolphins chasing fish past it, the hull on the surface, and then the people and sails twinkling through the water. And he said, magnificent, but you're not going to see the keel. So he took the drawing home, and his wife flew out from San Diego a couple of weeks later, and he rang me and he said, she's insisting we have the painting. So I was allowed to see the keel, and the men making it gave me some fiberglass to make a little souvenir yacht or something with, you see, but knowing me, of course, I'd make a bird. No, the bully. And here are 3 nettles, and you've got to have a look for them when you come. There's 3 little plants about 1 metre high with spikyish leaves. They're the world's most deadly plant. They are onga onga or New Zealand tree nettle, and they grow to about 10 feet. They are the host plant for the yellow and red admiral butterflies. That's why I've got them. And I've also got them because I can get the attention of 14 to 16-year-old boys that come with their parents, and they hate the idea of going to a garden. So I whisper outside to them, if you remind me, I'll show you the world's most deadly plant, and I have their attention for the next hour. Because it's very, very serious, it kills horses, dogs and hunters if they fall into it. People have died and stuff.
What about the birds?
Birds' feathers protect them because it's got to get into your blood. See?
Oh, okay.
I thought if some idiot does touch it, I want to find out whether Doc takes the pain away like it does for normal nettles. This is a wonderful orchid from Asia, and I had 15 flowers. You know, Cattleya are the great big ones that women like wearing here. This has flowers like it, brilliant pink, white and yellow. It had 15. Doesn't look much of a plant until it flowers, but it was spectacular this year. This is a palm from Madagascar with lovely green bamboo-like trunks. And I'm going to look after the people this end and get them into the aviary. The golden pheasant that the swinho beat up is in there. And I do have the 2 big lizards. Luckily we might see one. And I have a tropical pond, so I will show you the angelfish and things there. Now the pond is heated and there's angelfish. Here, baby.
Yes.
It's a green gourami.
It's
Look
coming
at that
out.
colour. Isn't that lovely?
Yeah.
That one there, see? And there's an angelfish coming out there in front of my stick. There's another one behind the log there. Try and stir them out. And I'm glad some of you have seen the green one. I hope the others will. So if you've seen the pretty green fish and the angelfish, just go up, get the driver, and he'll show you the DVD.
Oh, okay. Can you see?
I won't disturb it too much, Chaz, so you can get the green one. That's and there's the big Plecostomus on the bottom. He's from the Amazon. No, he's an algae eater, and you never touch him because every scale has a thorn on it. If you look carefully, you'll see how rough he is. And that's his protection. And they are very, very ancient. The old fossilized fish look like that.
Oh, okay.
You might remember.
Yeah, that brownish buffy colour. Yeah.
The birds being all born in New Zealand, and they're all males in the big garden. They're all males because they're the most beautiful. As you know, males are the most beautiful of this. I'm sorry. They are territorial, and if I can simplify it by saying, you know how chickens stay around the farmyard? Okay? Pheasants and chickens are from the same family. Turkeys aren't. Turkeys aren't pheasants, but chickens are. So I worked out that if I had different species of pheasant and they were all males, they would all individually think that this is their territory. So they get fed at 8:30 in the morning and 4 in the evening. They don't have vermin frightening them, and they don't have a competitor. You understand? And in the wild, a pheasant stays on the sides of hills normally. Most of them are on hilly and mountainous country, and they call every morning and they patrol their area to keep any other males out. Mother comes in, gets mated and goes away, and then another mother might come in. You see, he's very lucky. So over the years he keeps his territory, okay? And it works. I've had them in here for 5 years. I've only got one bully, and we've got a little story about him. He's the swinho pheasant who has 2 white feathers for his tail. And ma'am, if you could just move a fraction, there's a little poster behind you.
Yes.
Some of you will be able to see he's navy blue and has red face, like the local ringneck pheasants have red faces. That's that one, yes. And he's my little bully. He's from Taiwan. And I'm afraid I showed them BBC News one night and he beat up the Chinese pheasant. This one here is from China. So the beautiful golden pheasant lives in the aviary and he limps. But I've got to tell you, he doesn't limp all the time. Is from the wing of a giant pheasant in Borneo. And look at the symmetry and the discipline of this pattern. Isn't it fantastic? You can see okay?
Are they raised or is it just like a 3D effect?
It's just a 3D effect. Amazing. Flat as anything, see?
Yes.
And you imagine 16 of these on each wing. Imagine the wing. This study, it's really a study of a rainbow fish from New Guinea, and a friend of mine who looks after my property when I go overseas has had this fish named after him. He's an ichthyologist, and this painting of the species named after him is for him. So it's an unusual job, this one. You can't be quite as artistically loose as you want to be with this, because it's a scientific record, and it's pretty nice, isn't it, to have a species named after you before you go off this planet.
Was the painting the inspiration for the garden?
Well, to be honest, I've always been interested in plants and nature generally, so the painting wasn't essentially an inspiration for the garden. It's just part of my life to have beautiful wildlife around me. So it's a tandem thing, really. It's part of my nature to have wildlife and part of my nature to paint it. The inspiration for such an exotic garden really came from the fact that I lived and travelled overseas for so long and loved seeing all the exotic things. And when I returned to New Zealand, the fact that you could buy plants and birds which were so exotic here was a great thrill, and so the garden evolved really on the availability of exotica to remind me of my trips away to foreign exciting lands. The garden was initially a sheep paddock, and in 1989 I planted a lot of exotic plants in the garden and fenced off a section to keep the sheep out. And then 5 years ago I designed the idea for an aviary and a wall to keep the vermin out, and that was an amazing event. It took about 3 years to get an engineer to design the aviary, and it was built on the paddock and then lifted up over the trees which had already been established for about 15 years by then. And I vermin-proofed the whole garden with 1 metre of concrete underground all the way around, and there's an electrified fence to keep stoats and rats and dogs and cats and so on out. It did take about 2 full years to do that, so that was 5 years ago.
It's got a huge concrete base, hasn't it?
The actual wall is underground all the way around the garden, but there's no concrete underneath the garden or the aviary as such. There's just foundations for the aviary to sit on, and the concrete wall around the perimeter seals 2 sides of the aviary. The rest's on pedestals.
What have you got in the garden there?
Well, initially, of course, there's a lot of exotic plants from a lot from Africa and Australia, including a 500-year-old grass tree which came in from Australia. It took 4 years to bring that in. And there's ponds with water plants and palms and papyrus and things like that. And then there's 7 turtles and 1 tortoise, a couple of water dragons from Australia that are getting on for 1 metre in length now. And I have quail and doves, pheasants, special ducks. One's the mandarin from China, the other is the wood duck from North America. And then in the aviary itself I have tropical fish, and a lot of finches and quail and doves and so on. So there's about 18 species of bird in the aviary, which also has a lot of exotic plants in as well. You're not allowed to bring any birds into the country now, and so of course I've had to source the birds I purchased from people who breed them in New Zealand, and they've come from as far as Tauranga and Hamilton and Coatesville up north of Auckland. Most people specialise in a few species, so I go to somebody for pheasants or somebody else for ducks or somebody for finches and so on, and a lot of them become good friends. Luckily a lot of the birds live a long time. I've had finches for 5 years, and I've had one of my pheasants from the old days lived for 17 years, so it's not a problem populating the aviary, because once you've started collecting and then breeding, you've got a consistent population in there.
The birds are all males, aren't they? Is there a reason for that?
The males are out in the garden. I should say the ducks and the pheasants are males only, because they live in the garden where there's no roof, and they're territorial birds, and so they stay there. There's no vermin. They get fed twice a day, and it's a huge area for them, and there's only one of each species, and that's the secret. They stay there because they're not being threatened by one of their own. No females, because I can't have breeding. I can't have the young flying out into the sky through the top. And they would also mate with the wrong species if I had females in there. The only way to breed and to have females is to have one cock pheasant and one hen pheasant, and that's it. Yes, in 1977 I was asked to have an exhibition in London, and subsequently, after the show had sold out, a company in Australia produced a book, and a Don at King's College Cambridge did the text, and Sir Peter Scott did the foreword. So this is called Pisces Tropicanae, and that has my whole exhibition within it. And then many years later, in 1990, I had an exhibition in Australia of the 50 rarest birds of the world, and this beautiful book was done on that exhibition. And there are 2 New Zealand birds in here, the kokako and the kakapo, of course, some of our rarest creatures. The original paintings once again sold in Australia this time, and the South Island kakako is in the book, and so is our kakapo. And there were 43 kakapos in 1990 when I did the painting, and now there's 101. So that's lovely.
Two other paintings, which as yet have not been published and didn't appear in the books, are long-time favourites of Blake's.